Knon 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
And good morning and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Syphilis Taffet and I'm in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Chlamydia Fink. If you live in North Dallas, you've probably always wondered where you could get an STD. Many of you know Bret Camp from the Nelson Thibodeau Clinic in Oak Lawn, but now Bret is spreading disease and pestilence across North Dallas. We'd spend the hour talking about how he can give you a good case of gonorrhea, but instead we'll begin with some abstinence-only education, which is mandated by Texas curricula. Bret, welcome back to Lambda Weekly, and you're a living example of why no one should have sex. If we came to your new clinic, which diseases could we purchase?
David, there's a plethora of diseases that can be purchased.
At your clinic?
At our clinic, on any street, any corner. You can get them for anywhere from free to very expensive.
That's right.
The diseases do not know any kind of a price range. But
so these diseases are cheap to get, or
they are cheap, and usually some of them are easy and some of them are hard.
Tell us about the easy ones.
The easy ones first.
Yeah.
Well, our easy diseases, probably the easiest is going to be syphilis. That's a disease of contact. All you have to do is have contact with somebody. Gonorrhea is also an easy. It's a tissue-related disease, and then working up the chain, you finally get to the HIV, which is the harder of the diseases to catch because that actually takes a bloodborne body fluid and a route into the bloodstream.
And you know, that's actually contrary to what a lot of people think. They think it's easy to get HIV.
They do. HIV is one of the harder STDs to become infected with.
And why has it spread as much as it has then, if it is so hard to actually contract?
Well, HIV has evolved, as we all know. Back in the 80s when it first started, we didn't know how it was being passed from person to person. As we became more educated and learned a little bit more, it became, the rates started going down. And then once we did finally get medications that lower somebody's viral load and it reduces their infectability, that's when we started to see the HIV rates go down. And our challenges now with HIV are getting people on treatment, reducing their viral load, thereby reducing the community viral load, which will in turn lower infection rates.
I want to go back to the beginning because part of that introduction wasn't entirely serious.
You think?
Shocking, David.
You actually, the part that is right. People do know you from the Nelson Thibodeau Clinic. You're now with AHF, which is...
Yes, I'm now the Texas Regional Director for AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
And AIDS Healthcare Foundation has one clinic in Fort Worth at AOC,
yes,
AIDS Outreach Center. I hate talking in letters, but...
I call them the three-letter acronyms, TLAs.
There you go.
But there's one in Fort Worth, and then just last year, the end of last year, you opened one at Medical City.
We opened up a healthcare center at 7777 Forest Lane, Suite B122 in North Dallas.
Okay, now, everyone knows that AIDS specifically is only in Oak Lawn and South Dallas. Why did you open in North Dallas?
Well, David, that's not entirely correct.
But everybody knows it. And,
Everybody
and I would
thinks
be
they know
loath
it.
to spread incorrect information.
Yes, yes,
station.
but they're wrong when you assume that HIV is
But that is
only in Oak
yeah,
Lawn.
that's the assumption, and it's wrong.
It is. It's wrong.
But why specifically up right where you are?
There are kind of several areas in Dallas that have higher rates of HIV. You've got some of them over in South Dallas and Oak Cliff. You've got Oak Lawn, and then you've got a corridor along Forest Lane that has got a lot of people with HIV living there. So when AIDS Healthcare Foundation looked at putting our new healthcare center in Dallas, we recognize that there's already some really good services in the south part of the city, central part of the city, but there was not anything geographically located to be able to serve the population in North Dallas. So we looked at the bus lines, we looked at public transportation, we looked at DART, and where the people living with HIV were at. And the corner of Forest and Central is just kind of
hotspot.
The hotspot right there.
Now, the reason that you called me, and we're going to go back to some HIV stuff, has to do with the new STD clinic that you opened.
Right.
And like you said, some of these STDs, especially gonorrhea, syphilis, they're easy to get. Why are they so easy to get?
They're contact based. They're not body fluid based.
Okay, so if you just come in contact, if I just come in contact with Lerone, I have a good chance of contracting gonorrhea and syphilis.
Absolutely, and all in one.
Just gonorrhea.
Oh, just gonorrhea.
Just gonorrhea this week. He came and saw us last week, so we're not worried about anything else.
Well, that's the question, though. Is it easy to get? Is it easy to get rid of?
It is easy to get rid of. Gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis can all be easily treated. At our new wellness clinic, we offer gonorrhea testing and treatment, syphilis testing and treatment, chlamydia testing and treatment, and HIV testing and treatment.
Okay, what's the difference between these diseases?
You mean like as far
What's
as...
the difference between chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis? You can take one pill and get rid of all of them.
No, I was going to say, would you like me to describe each one for you? Okay.
In real vivid detail.
Vivid detail.
I want graphic. I want really disgusting.
Should we start with the discharges?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd say they're all equally horrible.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, first of all, those are all bacteria-based, right?
No.
As opposed to HIV, which is a virus.
HIV is viral, but that they respond to antibiotics.
Okay.
So,
and HIV does not.
HIV does not respond to an antibiotic.
Okay.
No.
Right.
No.
That was the problem at the very beginning.
Right.
But you know, early on, I mean, for millennia now, certainly centuries, there have been cases of people who've had syphilis into their adulthood and well beyond, and go crazy because it basically makes your brain mush. Are you seeing any of those like extended, like having the disease for a long period of time undiagnosed in all of these STDs?
That is of concern. There's a trend now where people are showing up co-infected at the same time, mostly with syphilis and HIV. Syphilis is called the great imitator. a lot of times, unless somebody goes and does a syphilis test, the symptoms could mimic something of another disease. It could mimic allergies. The skin rash could be wrote off as something else. So without actually doing the test, very often people who have syphilis don't know they've got it. And syphilis will start out in a early stage, and somebody will have usually a canker. Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's in places that are not visible. And then it will go dormant, and then it will come back, and it's a little more ticked off, and you've got a little more severe symptoms.
And that's years.
It can, yes, it can progress over a matter of months to years.
Well, before the show, we talked about that Bret has brought with us a top 10, not necessarily of STDs, but the leading communicable diseases, and it has a top 10, and one of them is early syphilis. So I had asked, what is early syphilis, and what you're kind of talking about now? I didn't know that there were stages of it.
Yeah, the early syphilis is...
And can I just say, Pattie would never get that. She'd get late syphilis.
Absolutely.
All right, so what is early syphilis as opposed to advanced syphilis?
Well, early syphilis is the first stages where there's a visible lesion. And if that lesion comes into contact with another person, that's when they will transmit it.
Okay, so most people think it's only sexually transmitted.
It does take a sexual tissue transmission.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I did see one case that was very interesting from one of my many different internet reports I got, where someone had syphilis of the nipple, but that is I've only seen that in journals once.
Wow.
But syphilis will progress in a matter of months to years through the primary to the secondary to the tertiary stage. Tertiary is where Pattie's talking about. Your brain will go to mush, and you could have organ failures, you can have different things affected, but at any stage in the disease, you can be treated and the syphilis can be cured. However, the damage that it may have caused is not reversible.
See, it's shocking to me, but in this day and age, if you don't get tested, I mean, that's the big screamer right there, is if you don't get tested for these things, syphilis could just be with you and you don't know it, and you could die this really horrible death.
Yeah.
That, I mean, a simple test would have solved, and it's been a problem.
And a simple pill,
right? And it's been around
Syphilis
forever,
is
and yet
injectable,
or a simple injection. But
yeah.
but people still are dying from these things, and people are still letting it get to that tertiary stage because they don't get tested.
Now, why are we talking about this specifically? What are the rates in Dallas? They're terrible, right?
The syphilis
highest in Texas.
Yeah. HIV is highest in Texas. Dallas, I'm sorry. Higher than per capita than Houston. That is also in part why AIDS Healthcare Foundation put our healthcare center in Dallas and Fort Worth, because there was a greater need in Dallas than in Houston. But the STD rates, we got to give that one to Houston. They've got a little bit higher rate than we do.
Oh, well, good for them.
So, yeah. Doesn't mean we're not having as much fun.
That's true.
The rivalry, where we go with this rivalry.
Because the Dallas-Houston rival has taken a whole new turn
It
now.
has.
We call that the I-45 love corridor.
Oh, good for them.
That is where we were just, driving down there over the 4th of July holiday, and they had the billboards up for this cabaret thing with the fine steak dining and all of this, and fabric-free dancing.
I've never heard it described that way.
Exactly, fabric-free.
What is fabric-free dancing?
Work on it, David.
Work on it. Yeah.
Process, David.
Yeah.
Process.
Think about it.
I'm too
While you're
wrapped up in syphilis right now.
While you're thinking about it, I do have a question. The key to a lot of this is early testing, finding out that you test positive for one of these diseases. So when somebody comes in to get tested, do you automatically test for all of them? Or
We
just
do.
one? Okay.
We do. Our protocol is that we will test for gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, and HIV. And to just make it extra special, we also, in order to be complete, you've got to test all the extragenital locations.
Oh.
Talk about that a
Talk
little
about
bit.
the extragenital locations. I knew that was coming out of you, David.
I was just trying to come up with a way to politely say that without using words that I shouldn't use on the
Surrounding
radio.
areas.
Absolutely. People have sex with different organs and different orifices, and
Yes.
you've got to check every orifice that's being used to make sure that there is not a horrible disease lurking in them.
I love the way he puts that. You can't be more delicate and medical than that.
This is Bret Camp, Director of Horrible Diseases, at his highest moment.
It is. You're great, Brett.
So, yeah, it is important that when you're getting a screening, that you do check all of the different areas, because sometimes the infections that are either oral or rectal are less symptomatic.
Oh.
And so, you can pass gonorrhea, chlamydia, or syphilis easily through oral sex.
And I know you're not a doctor, but would you say one
But he
is
plays
better?
one on the radio.
He plays one on the
I
radio.
play one, yes.
One is better than the other as far as going to get tested for STDs at your general practitioner or going to a clinic that specializes in it. That's like one of the clinics you work at. Because, when you go to the doctor, they might test you just for the symptoms that they think you have.
Oh, my doctor tested me for everything.
Yeah,
He
my
was
doctor
taking-
does too.
He knows you
no
well,
chance.
David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sweeping screen on David.
Exactly.
But I don't know if just, especially, a heterosexual doctor who's not really schooled in these areas, I don't know if they would just okay, we need to do a full battery of tests.
Well, at AHF, because these wellness clinics are, they're our business. This is what we know. This is what we are experts at, HIV and STDs. We've got experience that has been learned across the country at our other healthcare centers and our other wellness centers that have made the protocols that we're using, where we are doing all the extragenital testing to be, the most effective. Very often somebody may be afraid to admit that they are having anal sex, and therefore if you don't test them, you could be missing something.
Right.
So for a person, whether they're gay or straight, who may have been engaged in some of these activities, or maybe perhaps with strangers or unsafely or whatever the circumstance, or many of them all together at one time, could feel really confident about going to your organization and getting the whole raft, and then just find out where they are, get their status on all of this stuff.
Right. It's really important that you do all that. And, many of the people that come to us either because it's more convenient. They, may not have a payer source. They don't have insurance. They don't have the money to get tested. And we provide our services to everybody regardless of ability to pay.
We're talking to Bret Camp. He is the Texas director of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, with clinics in Dallas and Fort Worth. Opened in Dallas a new STD clinic just recently. Oh, in June. Okay.
A month ago today.
And they're giving out all kinds of STDs up there. So if you need one, you can go to their clinic. And
if you need to get rid of one,
if you need to get rid of one,
we can help
too.
you get rid of it.
Well, so it's kind of like an STD exchange.
Take one, leave one. Yeah.
Yes.
I've had chlamydia, get rid of that one, pick up a case of herpes.
Or at least education on how not to get the herpes.
How not to get it.
You
Okay,
can't
we'll
get rid
talk
of
about how not to.
Because you can't get rid of herpes.
No.
Yeah.
We can reduce it, but you can't.
So you can just pick it up there.
Just pick it up.
Yeah.
You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm David Taffet. I'm here with Chlamydia Fink and Gonorrhea Landis. We'll be back with more right after this.
In Dallas, local partners and national nonprofit Connect to Compete have made available for residents digital skills training classes. Classes include basic internet searching, internet basics, computer basics, and more. Local residents are also eligible for programs that provide assistance for internet service and computers. For more information on internet classes at local libraries, their phone number is 1-855-387-9166 or on the web at everyoneon.org. This program is in partnership with Dallas Area Libraries, Connect to Compete, and the Ad Council.
When they're gone for good. This is Scott from KNON's Texas Blues Radio telling you don't miss out on some great blues. KNON's Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 Blues CD. It's a CD put together by real blues fans for real blues fans like you. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 features great local blues from Michael J. and the Paul Bird Band, JJ and the Detonators, the Chris Watson Band, the Two Tones, Rough Cut Blues Band, Jeff Stone with Charlie Love, Dave Millsap, Sirloin and the Ass Kicking Machine, Tutu Jones, Blues Boy Bo, Buddy Whittington, Andrea Dawson, Kirkland James, Sonny Colley, and Johnny Red and the Roosters. Get a copy now at Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, Record Town in Fort Worth, and in Dallas at Bill's Records. This is a Dallas Blues collector's item. A very limited amount of vinyl copies can be found at Forever Young Records, the sponsor of this great blues project. CD downloads are available at cdbaby.com. Whether you get it as a download, on vinyl, or on CD, all the proceeds will benefit KNON. For more info on Texas Blues Radio Volume 5, visit knon.org.
This is Jason Wright from Dallas, and I listen to Lambda Weekly 89.3 KNON.
Camera.
This is Kimberly Truex of the GLBT Wedding.
That was a very good segue. Thank you, Clint. And that's the kind of professional help we're getting here now. It's a pleasure to have you here, Clint. But he's more, I don't know, just...
He's worried about who knows about his STDs.
Thank you. I didn't want to just say it.
I missed the bumper. Was it something...
No, it just kind of cut off in the middle.
Oh, there we go.
It kept playing and playing and playing. And we're talking with Bret Camp. He is the Texas director of...
For AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which has how many clinics around the world?
We are in 26 countries. We have services in 26 countries, and we have over 200,000 patients that we are providing care to.
Yeah, nonprofit organization. So if our station manager's listening, no, this is not a for-profit thing. It's completely a nonprofit organization, just incredibly well run from everything I've seen when I've been to their offices, and is providing lots and lots of good care to people with HIV, and now people with, you can stop in and check on other STDs.
I want to talk about HIV a little bit. Specifically, I think for the second time now in less than a year or so, or maybe a little over a year, there's been news that someone has been cured. Can you talk a little bit about that and how they were cured, and is that something that you can mass reproduce?
Yeah, there are a couple of exciting things that have come out in the fields of research. Bone marrow transplants, where people who have had HIV are able to clear it through the transplanted bone marrow becoming dominant and eliminating HIV from somebody's system. But what we've got to remember, those are great models. We're learning from them. But in order to reach the millions of people with HIV, it is not at this point a practical.
In both of those cases, weren't they treating something else, some type of cancer?
Right. Yes.
I know I interviewed somebody, he's on the Dallas soccer team, FC Dallas. And he had volunteered to be a bone marrow donor several years ago because somebody that was on a former team he was on needed bone marrow. Well, several years later, he was a match. He had to take off a couple of months to donate that marrow. He took off part of last season. I mean, wonderful person. Because when I asked him, how can you lose part of your sports season? He said, well, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it. I mean, I was saving somebody's life. That's a lot more important. But it's that serious. The donor is going to be incapacitated for a month at least, if not two or three. It depends on the person how fast you recover. And he's a professional athlete. It took him more than a month.
And with bone marrow transplants, the chance of finding the donor is often very difficult.
Right.
And in the case of the Berlin patient, which we're referencing, not only was it that they found a donor who was a match, but they found a donor that was a match who had a genetic mutation that was kind of like a genetic immunity.
It blocked the HIV from replicating.
HIV. So, that was finding a needle in a haystack and a needle in a haystack kind of a situation.
So this mutation, are they working with this mutation to see if they can replicate it in a drug?
Well, I think that you're touching on something that I've always felt is, the big advances in HIV are likely to come from some kind of a gene therapy, something.
And when I say a drug, I mean, that's what I mean, a gene therapy. That's not really a drug.
But they have looked at taking even a person's own bone marrow and in the laboratory splicing it so that it had a mutation that did not allow HIV to replicate, and then reintroducing it. So there are some studies that are starting like that, then you don't have to find the needle in the haystack and the needle in the haystack in order to have that same result. But
right. And speaking of mutations, Lerone?
Well, we're moving on to babies now, because now there's also news that a baby has been cured, which this isn't the first time I've actually heard about a baby being born who tested positive, but then later on tested negative. Can you talk about what that actually means?
Yeah, well, a mother who's HIV positive, if she's receiving the proper prenatal care, and the prenatal care is given during delivery, and then the care is given to the infant after birth, there's a very good chance that the baby can be HIV negative. But when a baby's born to a woman who's HIV positive, very often the antibodies from the mother will be present in the baby, and that baby's going to test positive for a while. So we've come a long way in the transmission from mother to child in HIV, with HIV in the United States. Where we still have trouble is in some of the developing nations, where they don't have the ability to access the medications. They don't have the kind of prenatal care. The babies are born vaginally, and when a baby is born vaginally, that is a risk for the baby who, in the womb is negative, but as they
they get an exposure.
They get an exposure, and very often the exposure can be through the eyes or the mucous membranes of the mouth, because they are, the baby's mucous membranes in their mouth are not developed the same way an adult is. That's why breastfeeding is such a route of transmission for infants, but not adults.
We were talking.
Why not for adults?
Your mouth is a little better developed.
Ah,
gotcha.
Different tissues.
Most people wouldn't think so.
Well, we say we're testing because the antibodies may be present in the infant for a while, but that's really the way we test for viruses. It's sort of a mirror, because they're there, and then they produce antibodies, and we measure the antibodies as a measure of the virus.
But there's actually some really exciting advancements that some of the more recent generations of HIV and STD testings, like the nucleic acid amplification test, the PCR. Don't ask me to say that word; that's a long one. But those are tests that are actually looking for virus.
They're looking directly for virus.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
And is that the difference in how you can tell? Because I've always been confused about what's the difference between being cured and having a undetectable load.
Correct. Not exactly. But you're so pretty. The difference between the cure is, we've only got just a handful of people that were still tentatively, thinking that this has been a cure. A better way to put that is that, that we've reduced the virus to an undetectable level. Magic Johnson's an example. Everybody thinks he's cured.
Right.
But in reality, if he came off his medications, that virus would come back. So the other thing that's exciting about the technology advances in testing techniques is that using these tests that are actually looking for virus or pieces of virus rather than an antibody, they've become more sensitive. Those of us who remember back in the 80s or 90s when they were first coming out with HIV testing, the window period for one, the lab would take you 3 weeks to get your result, and then you'd say you'd have to come back in 6 months to make sure that's what the test really was. Well, the newer generation tests, like the 1-minute test we're using at our AHF clinics and in our AHF outreach, is a newer generation, and that window period's reduced down to several weeks rather than 6 months. So by looking for the virus.
So you're recommending doing a second test even with that minute test a few weeks later?
To be absolutely sure, that's technically the way you should.
And the reason for this is because it takes a while for the HIV to do what it needs to do so that you can read it, and you want to make sure that you didn't contract it during that last period.
Correct.
Where it wouldn't have manifested itself.
I always use the New Year's party example where, if somebody had a unprotected event on New Year's Eve and they came and got tested January 3rd, well, you're going to have to come back and retest. But if you were to come back January 21st and you're using the current technology of tests, or the most current, you've got a pretty good chance of that being an accurate result.
That's amazing.
Back in 95, it used to be you'd have to wait until June.
Yeah.
While we're talking about testing, the other new advance in testing, this is since you're on last time, I think, is the release of the home HIV testing.
Right.
And I have mixed feelings on that, I guess because I know too many people who have tested positive over the years, and I know a lot of people who've said that's not something that you want to find out about when you're home alone by yourself. Oops, I have a fatal disease. Not that it's necessarily fatal anymore, but
it's really important we use all the tools in our toolbox when we're looking at fighting HIV. And if that is the only way someone will access testing, it's got a place. But you just can't replace that human touch, that voice, that eye contact when you're talking with somebody.
The new home test, you get the results right then and there. You don't have to mail it in.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
And you get the information. Even somebody who's prepared for it because they have lots of friends who've been HIV, they know that there are treatments. That's some devastating news because it means, first of all, you will be on medication the rest of your life. You will have a lifestyle change. It's not that you're going to immediately die. It used to be that death sentence, but that's what goes through your mind immediately.
I think from our generation, that's what goes through your mind. These kids these days, they think they can just pop.
Well, they think there's a cure, and there isn't.
Yeah, there isn't.
And an interesting point, looking over both the STD and the HIV profiles in North Texas, the age groups that have got 55% right at 55% of infections are coming from people who are 13 to 26.
Wow.
It's the younger generation who never saw the devastation that us old-timers will remember.
13 is kind of young to be getting these diseases.
So it's alarming, but that's the lowest age they classify, and I do know people within the public health departments who are saying, yeah, we've got 13-year-olds coming in with STDs.
This is scary.
Yeah.
That is scary.
I mean, you haven't even started life.
Right.
No.
And now you've got a very adult issue.
Very adult. Now, the 1 minute test, is that a blood test or is it a saliva test?
The 1 minute test is a finger prick.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a venipuncture test. It's got an incredible accuracy rate, and it is really simple. Maybe the next time I come on, I can bring a test and we can do a demonstration for your viewers.
That would be lovely.
That would be lovely.
We'll test Clint because it involves drawing blood. So
Perfect.
I want to draw blood from Clint. Clint's our producer.
We love you, Clint.
Okay, so this 1 minute.
How do you know, Clint?
How do I know? I don't know how to put this delicately, but I've only ever had one partner. So
There
she's
you
only
go.
ever had one partner.
But were
this
they the
is-
same
This
partner?
is a myth, Clint. This is a myth. Have you tested? Okay.
Okay.
Because we want our listeners
we-
to go test too.
We want our listeners to test. Just because you've only had one partner doesn't mean you can't have gotten something.
With the 1 minute test, you're saying it's incredibly accurate. Are some people going to think, well, it might be wrong, I just did a test myself? What do you do when you get a positive test with a home test? Do you need to go and have it verified?
Yes, the at-home tests don't have an algorithm set up to be able to run a second test. You wouldn't want to use that same technology again. And
Google has
so
algorithms. I didn't know home tests had.
There's protocols and algorithms of different testing assays and how they look at coming to their result. So you wouldn't want to use the same testing algorithm because you would likely get the same testing result. So you look
There's a
at
second reason that you have to go and have it double checked, because even though you can test yourself at home, you can't medicate yourself at home.
Right.
And you do need to talk to a doctor
and
about
you do
medication.
need, yes, and that is usually why the home tests, if you get a positive test, you have to go somewhere else to get the second test.
To get the second test and begin a
your
treatment regimen.
And the home test, is that also a finger prick test? Or is that
No, that's
saliva?
oral.
That's oral.
That's done with an oral swab.
Okay.
Right now, we need to take a break in just a minute, but right now, when somebody tests positive, are they putting them on drugs immediately, or does it have to do with their viral load count? How are they determining when people go on medication?
After someone tests positive, you've got to do a more thorough workup. You've got to find out, whether there is already immune compromised, that they need to be on prophylactic medications. That happens, very quick. And then it's most appropriate for the provider to look at the viral load. They usually will run some kind of a genotyping test that will help the doctor determine what the most appropriate regimen is going to be for that patient. So those are all things that are incorporated into.
But most people are going on medication pretty quickly after a diagnosis now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We're talking to Bret Camp. He is the Texas director of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Just opened a new STD clinic up in North Dallas where there is a high concentration of STDs. So if you want to get one, if you want to get rid of one, go and see Bret.
You want to be tested for one?
If you want to be tested for one, all of them. Yeah, they're not just going to test you for one, they'll test you for all.
And I expect to see all three of you in the clinic on Monday.
I have to work. I need to be. You need to be even more than I do. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. We'll be back with more right after this.
GoodSearch.com provides a way for you to support nonprofits like KNON with your online shopping and dining. GoodSearch.com offers a downloadable toolbar for searching from your computer called Good App, so your purchases can go to support KNON. With Good Dining, every time you go out to eat at participating restaurants, then a portion of what you spend gets donated to KNON. Registering is easy at GoodSearch.com, and Knon 89.3 is the name to enter in your account settings for charity selection. Support KNON with your online shopping and dining at GoodSearch.com.
This is Raphael McDonald from Resource Center Dallas. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM.
It's an 18.
And welcome back to Lambda Weekly. Did that not work again? Oh, it worked. I didn't hear it. Oh, we just talked over it. We're just having our own conversation here. This is Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis. Our guest today is Bret Camp. He's the Texas director of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And we're talking about AIDS. We're talking about STDs, which are... We have a terrible rate of... we have the worst rate of HIV in the state.
Per capita, Dallas is the highest in the state.
And Texas is higher than most other states.
It is. It is.
So,
and Houston's higher than Dallas on STDs.
On STDs. Houston did win the STD race.
Yeah.
Yes.
Congratulations, Houston. I will call Anissa's office on Monday and congratulate her on that. Because
well, talking about rates, I'm looking at this profile of diseases, sexually transmitted diseases in Dallas County that Bret printed out for us. And here's one that just kind of stood out for me. In 2011, there were over 5,000 gonorrhea diagnoses, mostly in black females, 24%, and black males, 17%, age 15 to 24. So we hear about black females are the new highest rate of HIV infections. Mm-hmm. I guess is that kind of just across the board for STDs also?
Well, the rates of HIV infections in black women is the fastest growing.
Fastest growing.
It's still not the largest, but it is a fastest growing population. Many contributing factors to the HIV epidemic in the communities of color that range everything from socioeconomic to religious to down low, to access to testing, to access to education. Mm-hmm. So,
and certainly access to treatment.
And access to treatment, absolutely. You know, there's just so many factors that are playing into that. That's why we are really reaching out to some of the more at-risk populations to try to reduce some of the disparities for them and help have an impact. There's a lot of good partners in the area that will work with that are specialists in those populations, and they're very important. There's no one person or organization that can make the impact or get us to an AIDS-free generation. It's going to take us all.
The rates of let's just take gonorrhea. What's the percentage male and female?
You've got younger eyes than me. I can't read that little print.
Male and female. Oh, here we are. Which one?
Male and female gonorrhea. Or any of them.
Let's see here. It's number 2 for both male and female.
Mm-hmm. But what's the percentage of it that's male, percentage female?
It actually doesn't give that.
It didn't break that out.
Okay. Break that now.
And here's why I'm asking: is that particularly prevalent in the gay community?
Well, it doesn't break it down, but it does have the number. There's 1,100 cases of gonorrhea cases for females and 896 for male.
Okay, so women,
predominantly female.
So women are getting a lot more of it. Is that woman-to-woman transmission, or is it man-to-woman and just one man is infecting a whole bunch of women, do we think?
Well, there's, a lot of the women who are testing positive for gonorrhea or chlamydia, they're heterosexual women. Same thing with HIV. Mm-hmm. They are having sex with men, and it's generally the male partner that's bringing the STD into the relationship.
And then maybe the reason 800 men, 1,100 women is that the one man is having sex with multiple women and
Gotcha.
Spreading it that way.
Because on the chlamydia, the gonorrhea, that's not too big of a difference. 896 compared to 1,100. The chlamydia, wow. Men, 1,600 cases. Female, over 6,000.
Okay, talk a little bit about chlamydia, because
That's a huge difference.
That's a disease that 20 years ago you never even heard of. And now that's...
20 years ago, you certainly wouldn't talk about it. So that's why you don't hear about it.
I would.
Well,
I was always happy to talk about
chlamydia is often a little more discreet, and especially when you're looking at women, they can think that maybe they've just got a little yeast infection, or they may be more likely to go and get tested. I think that it's also important that you realize that with the male, they may not be accessing the testing as much. Women often have OBGYN.
Wasn't chlamydia thought to be mostly a female disease?
Okay, if not, according to this,
not now. I'm saying
looks like
wasn't
by reputation. I
by
think
reputation.
It has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
So people weren't testing men for it.
people weren't testing men for it.
So Lerone has gone all these years and hasn't gotten tested for
Right.
it, and boy, does he need a test.
But the whole, you're talking the numbers in the same way that we, for example, talk about crime rates in Oak Lawn or crime rates in the LGBT community. If you're not reporting it, it doesn't get counted. And it's the same with, many things about rape.
But
Women don't
these-
report rapes, and so it
Yeah.
looks like it's low. But maybe it really isn't. Maybe the men really do need to get tested, and they'd have 6,000 cases.
Yeah.
You don't know.
We also need to take into consideration that there have been some cases, and this isn't the vast majority, where somebody could have an STD, and the doctor looks at them and says, well, okay, you've got this kind of an infection, so they give them the medication, and it actually treats the STD. I've seen that in syphilis a couple times, where people have come back, and once you've had syphilis, it shows up for quite a while. And if you don't know someone has already had it, you think it's a new infection, and you tell them, you've had syphilis at some point, and they're like, I never had syphilis. Well, you must have had it, but the doctor thought it was something else and treated you.
Well, and that's like, you were on the show one time, and I had just gone through, I was taking antibiotics. I forgot what it was for. It was for a non-sexually transmitted disease.
David, sure.
One of the things I said to you was, okay, so if I took this particular drug, I forgot what it was, I don't have any STDs right now, right? And you said, yeah, chances are you don't. I mean, you're not saying don't get tested, but chances are that cleared anything, all these things that I probably did have, it cleared all of them up.
Or at least one of them, because it does take different antibiotics for each one.
Okay.
So we were only concentrating on one of your STDs, David.
That must be what it was. Explain what chlamydia is, because it is a disease that we've heard the name, and it just isn't as well known. So what is it exactly?
Well, chlamydia,
you don't need to go too
deep. I'll just say it's subtle, but it's often mistaken as gonorrhea.
Okay.
A discharge. So it's subtle.
Is it a bacterial disease, or
it's chlamydia is treated with antibiotics, so
it is bacterial.
Falls into that same
category, even if it's not. Yeah.
This is when people, male or female, just go, that ain't right.
Right.
I'm going in.
We're starting to run out of time. I want to talk just for a minute about what is prevention as treatment for HIV. That's a new biggie.
Right. We are, as we learn through experience, we're finding that one of the best treatments is prevention, and one of the best preventions is treatment. If we can identify everyone who has HIV, get them on medication, reduce their viral load, which in turn will reduce the whole community's viral load, the infection rates go down, and that's how we're going to be able to achieve this AIDS-free generation.
Okay, so what you're saying is that somebody who has HIV, if his viral load count is 10,000, let's say, he's more likely to infect a partner, because you don't infect on every sexual contact. He's more likely to infect a partner than somebody who is practically
Who is undetectable.
Undetectable.
Yes.
Because the person who's undetectable just doesn't have as much virus that he is transmitting, right?
Correct.
And it's that simple.
It's that simple. And the person who is most infectious is the person who thinks they're negative, who is really positive.
Because they're not on medication.
They're not on medication. They have
careful.
A wild type kind of virus, which is easiest to infect other people. So that's using preventionist treatment and treatment as prevention.
Now, this is a prevention treatment too, but it's much more controversial. It's called PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis. What is that?
Pre-exposure prophylaxis is taking medication that is traditionally used for the treatment of HIV as a prevention for HIV.
It'd be kind of like taking chemo for cancer when you don't have the cancer.
Or having a mastectomy because you are prone to breast cancer.
It's
that radical a treatment.
It's a radical concept. There are applications. We need, as I said, we need all these tools in our toolbox. But PrEP is shown to have questionable efficacy rates because of the compliance in the populations that are accessing it.
So who's accessing it? I mean, just anybody who says, "Oh, I want to go take this," you just go ask your doctor for it.
Well, if you've got a payer source, or there are different programs, but for the most part, the people that are trying to access it are men who are having sex with men who are at risk. And very often we have trouble with people who have HIV being compliant. And if you don't have HIV, you are even less likely to be compliant with the medication.
There's sort of a lesser motivation. If I'm not really, I don't really have it right now, then if I forget this dose, or I walk out the door to go do whatever and don't take my dose, then no big deal.
And many of the people who would benefit the most don't have the access. If you've got someone in an abusive relationship who does not have the opportunity to say, wear a condom or don't, they don't, or a sex trade worker, they may not have the resources to be able to access PrEP. So, and PrEP must be used in conjunction with traditional methods like condoms.
Right. So PrEP for the average gay couple who might be thinking about it, who've read about it, would be if you have a discordant couple. In other words, one is positive, one's negative, and especially a new couple that is discordant. In other words, the negative person is just getting used to dealing with the interpersonal relationships. How's this for skirting around using words? Dealing with the interpersonal relationships. While he's getting used to doing that, it's okay for him to be on PrEP just to make sure that he's not infecting himself until he's really confident with what he's doing and preventing it through condoms and through everything else.
In theory. You're getting it in theory, but there's so many things in practical application that makes that more challenging.
And I'm not saying I understand the compliance issue. You have to take your medication every single day, or it simply doesn't work.
Correct.
And it sounds like this is an expensive drug.
It is.
It is.
Okay.
It is an expensive drug.
You are our horrible disease expert. We're having another. You're welcome. We're having another outbreak of West Nile virus, which I think in Dallas should be really called East Trinity virus, shouldn't it?
Possibly.
Do you want to just talk about what is West Nile virus? How do you avoid it? I mean, not sexually transmitted disease. Don't go to your clinic for it. But
no, West Nile is something that people who are immune compromised need to be especially aware of, as well as the general population. And we are worried about West Nile right now with all the rain we've had, and now it's starting to dry out. The temperature's going up. It's the perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes. I walked around my backyard the other day and was dumping out all the saucers and under my plants, and you find cups or anything like that could have water pooling in them. So, West Nile, it can be prevented to the extent that you need to wear clothing that covers you, make sure that you're wearing DEET, bug spray, and avoid the times of day where the mosquitoes are more active.
I like to spray myself with Raid because I love the smell.
You like that kind of
I use it for cologne.
It's hot. Little dab behind your ears for your dates.
Odor Raid.
Yeah.
Odor Raid.
Yeah. It works.
But I think that's really important, though, in this time, is to walk your yard. To if you see a neighbor that's maybe elderly and can't get out and deal with it, maybe ask if you could take care of it, because it's that standing water.
And call the city.
Which is the problem.
Call
where
and report. Standing water. I saw something on TV about somebody who had their neighbor had a broken pipe uphill, and it was pooling water in their house or their yard. So.
And this really does require everybody to work together as a community.
Do you know what they found last year? Some of the highest incidents of it were in Highland Park and some of the wealthier zip codes. And it's like, how do these mosquitoes know that these are the nice places and this is where we want to live? What they found was, in places like Oak Cliff, we water, but just enough, and we don't leave the water going too much. In some of the wealthier zip codes, they just water and water and water to make sure they're...
And they're not there. They're at their second home in Florida.
Exactly. So it's automatic. They're not turning it off, and that's where the water's standing, and that's where they're breeding, and that's where the worst incidents are. But that doesn't mean don't look for it everywhere in the city.
And you could do it all right, and your neighbor could do it all wrong, and you could still be suffering from West Nile because they're there mosquitoes.
Well, Bret, I want to thank you for being with us. If anybody would like to go for STD testing, you're located on the Medical City campus.
We're at 777 Forest Lane in Suite B122. You can...
Do they have to call ahead?
Our clinic runs on Monday from 3 to 6 and Thursday from 3 to 7. I'm sorry, it's Monday 3 to 7, Thursday 3 to 6.
That was clear.
Very clear, but the best way to check is go to freestdcheck.net.
Great.
And maybe I could even talk you into putting that link on your
our
website.
We will certainly email me that, and I will get it up there during the week.
It'll be there.
Good. Thank you for being with us again, Bret. Come see us again, because always lots of information when you're here. And we'll be back next week with more Lambda Weekly. For the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis, I'm Dave Taffet. See you next week.
Thank you.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.